Hello, hello. We call the special reconvening of the Council Priorities Committee meeting, and it's reconvening from the June meeting. Today is July the 22nd, so I'll call for an approval and receipt of the agenda items. Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Arneson. Anybody object? All in favor? None opposed? And then we don't have minutes from the previous one, do we? But there is something in your memo that is attached to this meeting. So,
we got as far, in my notes, we got as far as 5.12, and that was discussions regarding length of council meetings, how many of council meetings, and issues such as that. We could, as we didn't come to any consensus after a fairly...
No, we didn't do 509.
509? 511. Oh, okay.
Okay, so maybe we could start at 5.8 and try and get through to the end of the document. Now, does council agree that that might be a good plan? Seeing no objections, let's try that. And how much time do we have, Ms. Bauer?
We've got till 2 o'clock.
Oh, good. Well, let's see if we can get finished at 1:30. Ha ha. All right, so we'll continue and we'll let you lead the way, Ms. Bauer.
Okay, so Councillor Richter, we were on 50.
Yes, we left off at 508, and we had been talking about having a third meeting. And Councillor Whitman made a suggestion that the third meeting be for the closed items. Yeah. So we would do 2 meetings a month of just regular afternoon and evening and public hearing, and then the third meeting would be for closed items. So I actually like that idea. So if Councillor Whitmarsh wants to put it forward as an amendment, I would second it.
Just a moment. So yeah, we're going to push buttons here. Okay, good. There you go, Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yeah, I think it was a suggestion that was made to try and deal with business as we've had a lot of extra business added, and we talked about adding an additional meeting. So one suggestion was to make that a special closed meeting and to focus on those items that are of that nature and leaving the other 2 more for our regular business that we do in our regular afternoon and regular evening meeting along with public hearings. So I like that idea. I'm not sure if the once a month would be enough for a special close, but it certainly could be a day that's devoted to special closed topics on the third meeting of the month. But I thought maybe it'd be helpful maybe just to get some thoughts regarding that, maybe through the chair to staff, just what that would mean if we were to have that kind of structure for our meetings.
Thanks. So, Mr. Bakken, you're going to explain that we don't actually schedule special closed meetings. We schedule regular council meetings, and we move them into special closed. Is that right?
That's correct, and the concept is an interesting one. It does provide some challenges, though, in the context of any transactions that may be underway in terms of having a limited ability to notify council. So it was certainly something that is worthy of merit, but it may not lead to the results we want. I think where we started the discussion was, could we focus the public consultation to 1 meeting per month where it was not time sensitive to an event before council. So, for example, this evening, as the example, we have one matter that I don't believe would be time sensitive if it was held once a month. The other 2 could be relating to agenda items. Some variation of those was also some of the discussions we had. Other options are to try to actually overlap with the public consultation with public hearings, because the public hearings sometimes can be fairly lengthy, and there may be a desire to have a more of a time certain from which to start from. So those tend to lend themselves more easily to non-emerging events as opposed to restricting other opportunities for meetings.
So we don't have a motion yet, but we have a speakers list, but maybe we're talking about having a third meeting, and whether it's special closed or delegations or special issues, that could be determined as time goes on. But I'll just allow us to speak till, unless you want to actually make a motion, or can we discuss the motion?
No, I'm happy for us to discuss it. I guess the idea is that our meetings have become very long, and maybe having a third meeting would be helpful. And what the structure of that third meeting, I'm certainly open to hearing feedback from the group and what that looks like. Whether maybe it's a third meeting that's just only for public hearing items. It could be a variety of things, but I'm just wondering if it would be better to have a a specific focus on that third meeting, whether it's public input, whether it's special close, whether it's whatever, versus just having another meeting of being exactly the same so that we have 3 meetings the same, but it would actually be a specially focused meeting on that third time. So I'm open to hearing the discussion, and maybe based on that, we might make a motion regarding that.
Excellent. Councillor Ferguson?
I just wanted to get a bit of a grasp on what we want to do, if we want to have a special close, or whether we want to have the Council Priorities Committee on another day, or whether we wanted to do a hybrid of something else. I'm not 100% sold on moving to another meeting and another situation, although I do understand, the need sometimes to do something like that. I'm just not sold yet. We're still not into our first year, and I know, and most of councillors know, that the very first year is usually a very busy year, and people are looking, again, we consistently get our strategies priority chart, and we get on every meeting, and we get information on updates on what we've done, and plus we're still going through planning workshops with facilitators. So I'm not totally sold on, convinced that this is the time, but perhaps I really believe we should maybe explore something that's maybe January the 1st, 2020, we can look at it again and have a little bit more ammunition and information. So I'm not supportive right now. I think we need to, I don't mind long meetings, although it is difficult, but I think we have to do the people's business, but that's just my position. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Froese.
Thank you very much. No, I think having a special day for closed meetings could be challenging in that quite often there are time-sensitive legal issues, property issues, that sort of thing that come up regularly. To put that off to once a month, I think could be challenging. I prefer leaving that the way it is. It allows a lot of flexibility, and I think every meeting I've been to, there's been a closed item, at least one, that we needed to discuss. Certainly, I think there are items, that may, in closed and in council priority committees, that may require further discussion and large presentations by staff and healthy discussion by council. And those can certainly be put off on an off council day. And I think we've done that in the past with workshops. We've gone for a Monday that's not a council day. And I think that system works quite well. Certainly adding meetings, regular meetings, I think we can find ways to cut the agenda down with large presentations. Like today, for example, CPC on a long day. We could have maybe had this on an off day, but that's not what happened. This is an example, because the council the council procedure bylaw has taken some time. That's almost a full day workshop, but that's an example of something that could have had its own day, and I think we could look at it as one of those items that could come. So at the present, I think the system is working, but we could certainly, and with staff's help, be a little more vigilant on some of the larger items and set time aside for those. And we attempt to do that with the Council Priority Committee, but even Council Priority Committee could be on off Monday if the topic is large enough, so we can get that fulsome discussion. So at the present, I'm happy the way it is, but maybe with those tweaks, which can be called, as we've been calling, special workshops. For example, the one we just had with the Kwantlen First Nation was a day where we spent a day with them. So my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Richter. Push the button.
Thanks. I don't think our system is currently working. I think it's broken, and I think it needs to be fixed. When I first started on council, as Councillor Long will remember, we used to have a meeting every Monday, unless it was a stat holiday. And now we're down to 2 Mondays a week, or 2 Mondays a month. Our agendas have gotten far more complex. The material we have to cover has more depth and more complexity and more legal aspects. And I don't think, today's an excellent example. Two binders of material for today's meeting. And we're going to start at noon. If we get out of here by midnight today, that'll be lucky. And I don't think we're doing effective decision-making when we're having 12-hour meetings. So I think we do need to go to a third day of the month. I personally don't think it's very difficult just to say the third day of the month we're going to have. I mean, we look at the stuff that's on the agenda in camera today. I don't think any of it's particularly time sensitive, other than the fact we're not going to have another meeting until September, mid-September. So I liked Councillor Whitmarsh's suggestion, but we could put other things on that third day. We could do our delegations, we could do our CPC meetings, but I do think we need to get back into the routine of having a third meeting day a month. And we need to cut down on 12-hour meetings, because it's just simply not effective.
Thank you, and we have to be out by 10 tonight because I made reservations. Okay, Councillor Arneson, next.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I don't know this one.
Oh, there.
There you go. Sorry.
Self-help with the microphone. My thoughts about this are, I think that there's a few variables that we would have to consider. So maybe today might not be a day that we could decide definitively about whether or not and what we would be having that meeting for. But for practical purposes, I think it is good to pre-identify a day that would work, and perhaps staff could come back with a memo or some recommendations with respect to what could be included in those potential meetings. I just raised the issue of pre-identifying a date because I know people have different schedules, people work, and people make vacations quite a bit in advance. And so I would like to see this being discussed on an ongoing basis, perhaps, but not today being a date when we make a decision about whether or not, because I do realize it's complicated. It's a complicated issue from a timing point of view as well as time-sensitive matters. But I do agree in principle that the meetings can be too long, and I do think it impedes our decision-making. So I look forward to something potentially as a referral back so that we could hear more about what the parameters could look like. Thank you.
Ms. Bauer, if there was a decision to add a meeting, would it be next calendar year or could it come sooner? I know that we approved the meeting schedule the
If
prior
we were to
year.
add any meetings at this point, they would simply be added as special meetings as they weren't on the published calendar.
Right, okay.
So it can be easily done that way.
All right, thank you. So this should be Councillor Davis.
Okay, thank you. I purposely, because Jack's got everything in his little computer, I just purposely brought my, so he could see how high it was.
I saved a tree. This is for reducing
Okay. I'm teasing. I actually listened, I'm sorry I was late, I missed everyone else, but I actually listened to Councillor Ferguson's theory about the first year. And but I don't know. Like last year, it seemed to be kind of hectic. The question I have is the cost to having another meeting. Is that going to override? Like, is that going to be a problem, or is it just a problem for us on council? Like when I start to when I get too long and I sit down, I start to I can fall asleep. But the last comment was, Wendy, what's her last name? Mrs. Bauer, sorry. We could call a special meeting.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be a designated time slot.
Be a special meeting. The mayor can call a special meeting at any time. Or if we have or if we have to schedule a special meeting for things, I could do it as well.
Because maybe what we could do is, in my feeling, maybe what we could do, and I like the idea of the special closed on a separate day. However, that can be a cost too, because we have to have 3 or 4 people there, and the 3 or 4 people there are actually on the top of the payroll. So that that's not really a joke, but I wonder if we should just, in my opinion, we could let it go for another 6 months, get to January 1st, and then we'd have another thing we could bug Steve Ferguson about, or it might open up. It might not be a problem. This is the longest meeting of the year because it's spring break.
This is traditionally the longest meeting of the year.
We were trying to cram everything in.
Because it's the equinox, that's why. So, Mr. Backen, can you tell us, are you guys being paid by the hour, or is there going to be a cost to these meetings?
Actually, by the page, Mr. Chairman, so you'll see the page number increasing. So hearing some of the comments, so to interject to Councillor Davis, it may be appropriate to simply refer Section 5 of the procedure bylaw back to staff for some recommendations as to enhanced meeting processes. What I think we would do is go offline and try to figure out what we could schedule. Well, first of all, do we need to? Because it would take us some time. But I mean, I think there is some need for something to be altered and figure out what would actually work within our overall systems. We could bring that back, and then council could decide that's a good idea or it's not a good idea, or we'll defer that for 6 more months to see how the schedule plays out at least. Because I think there's many valid points about this topic, but it's going to be hard to nail them down here today.
Okay, and maybe I can make a comment before Councillor Richter speaks then. There isn't a motion yet, but what you're saying is you might come back with some recommendations. The other thing is that perhaps when Mayor Froese wasn't here at the last meeting, I'm pretty sure we said that there had been an unwritten policy that we do have to have CPCs on a council day. But now I'm hearing that there's a potential that we could have it on a non-council day, so that could be something. Go ahead, Mr. Backen.
No, that's correct. And Councillor Davis made an interesting observation in terms of the ability to call additional meetings. That exists, however, that often conflicts with other party schedules. The challenge with the year-long calendar is to make sure certain times are reserved. So if we were then to reserve, 6, 8, 10 extra days at the start of the year, that could work very well. But trying to add meetings now can be very complicated because everyone is booked based on the calendar schedule.
And it's easier to cancel a meeting than schedule one, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay, Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I like actually Councillor Arneson's suggestion, and I think we should just make a referral right now to staff to think about how we could blend in or work in a third meeting a month. And it doesn't have to be for this calendar year. I mean, this could go into effect, but give them some time to think about how we could. To me, the goal is no more 12-hour meetings, guys. This is nuts.
So would you say that, and Councillor Whitmarsh, you were going to make a motion that we would say refer it to staff, but we don't want to have CPCs any longer on council days? Is that what would that be included in?
Well, they could probably figure out what would be better. Maybe we should have special closed on a separate day.
Motion is to refer to staff and
just refer this
make it
to
so.
staff for a report.
Okay, moved by Councillor Richter, second by Mayor Froese, that the issue of meeting schedule be referred to staff to come back with an amicable solution hearing the discussion, right? Okay, you want to speak to that, or Councillor Ferguson, you want to speak to that motion?
I want to make absolutely sure that, I know this has got an addendum to the referral, that the staff could come back with some options to have it or not to have it, or to have just special close sometimes, or just by a suggestion of council or something, or the mayor to have special meetings. To give us some options, because I myself don't want to get caught up in one particular direction. I'd like to have some options. Thank you.
Yep, so what I'm hearing is it's wide open. We haven't made a motion that's being referred. We're referring the issue to staff. All right, we all in favor of that? Let's vote. I'm going to try the buttons here, I guess. Call the vote first. Call the vote. I'm going to call it one, I guess. Wow, passes with no objections. Okay, what are we doing next? So we're getting out of section 5.
Getting out of section 5, we're going to move on to section 6.
Okay.
Yes, I believe we did.
Okay, where are we at then?
I remember changing that, so yes.
Sorry, which one again? It's 5 point which? No later than 6, right.
Yeah, that was changed last time.
So that's a big change. We're all happy with that still? Yeah, well, we can always.
It always
change
has the
it.
escape clause. Yeah.
Okay, so then I guess we're going to go to 512. Well, I'll let you take it, Ms. Brown.
How about 6? We're 5 we're going to have staff take a look at and figure out how we can manage that. So that would move us on to part 6.
Oh, but there was some things at 512G. We have no issue with that? Now, please remind us again, the green means that was something that was changed at the last meeting or the previous meeting?
The green was the first meeting. The blue is the last meeting we had.
Okay, we're lighting up here. Do you want to, let's see what's going on. Councillor Richter?
I'm up, or Councillor Richter's up? I have a question.
Well, yeah, I've got an item here on my proposed notes. Revised to read the minutes of the closed meeting will include the topics and decisions made, as well as the mover, seconder, and vote counts on all motions.
Okay, wait a second. Which section are you referring to, Councillor?
512E.
512?
The minutes of a closed meeting may include only the topics and the decisions made. No, I think it should have the mover, the seconder, and the vote count.
Oh, well, okay, so that's something new. I don't have it anywhere here. Now, isn't there a reason because of the closed session that we don't do that?
I believe that the mover, the seconder, and the vote count have to be, or the mover and seconder is actually spoke to in another part of the bylaw. The vote count is, we're obligated to do that under the community charter. So I think what's trying to capture here is often we don't have the discussion reflected. It's simply to mean that the motions are included, not the overall discussion. So the mover and the seconder would always be included anyway, as that's
Yeah, because the minutes that we pass, they have the who's. Because you're required to put who's defeated.
Yes.
Sorry, who's against?
Who's opposed? Yes. But we are required to put who's opposed.
So that is being done, Councillor Richter.
No, but the way that this is worded here can be open to having just the topic, the motion, and a statement carried or defeated. And that's what I want to make sure doesn't happen, that we have that accountability record.
Okay, so under the community charter, we have to put down the voting record, and we have chosen to do it as opposed, so that by default is there. In another part of the bylaw, we discussed, I think the last time we did the discussion on the procedure bylaw. In another part of bylaw, it says that in all minutes we have the mover and the seconder. So those things are both covered, just not necessarily in that paragraph. The intent of this paragraph is just simply to ensure that we just cover the motions.
Okay, so 1202, the names of movers and seconders will be recorded in the minutes. All right, that's 1202. So, and can we change the word then, decisions to resolutions?
Well, actually, when they're made, they're not resolutions. When they're made, they're motions. Once they're passed, they're resolutions. So I think it's been left as decisions, as that way covers both.
Okay. But the intent going forward is movers, seconders, and
It's always been the intent.
Always, okay. All right, thank you.
Ferguson, Councillor?
I want to jump back a little bit because
Give us a section
this
then.
happens the odd time I get confused. Anyway, back to 5.9 is 6 o'clock unless it's got to be unanimous. Is that
No, there's two ways to do it. You can do it by unanimous consent, meaning the chair requires if anyone has any objection to doing it. Or if there is objection, you must do a full vote.
a full vote?
It still has to pass by the majority, but it's just two different ways of getting there.
Yes, so what happens is the mayor asks, and if nobody objects, we carry on. If one person objects, then we vote. Correct?
That's correct.
Councillor Long, you explaining it. You did a good job explaining. That's my own memory didn't remember. Now I remember. But I also wanted to point out that to make the meeting sometimes a little bit more efficient and effective, sometimes we need that extra 5 minutes to
Definitely.
get through staff's very complicated projects. So that 5 or 10 minutes would make a heck of a difference in the whole meeting of the whole
And that would be
evening.
the decision of
That's
council.
important. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that now I'm happy. Happier.
Okay, that took 5 minutes out of this meeting just now. Okay, no, we're moving on. Okay, carry on. No, don't worry. We're going to get through it though.
Okay, so Councillor Richter, I believe you were up to 5.17. Am I right? Okay. So I'm just going to quickly read over the notes that I've got here, and basically, it's meant to mean that council doesn't meet outside scheduled meetings, and therefore affect the transparency and potential advancing of council decisions in contravention of the community charter and case law. So I guess the point is to be very clear that council meetings happen at the council table and not necessarily somewhere else. So in the public realm.
But that is a provision of the community charter, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So we could take it right out of there if you'd like.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. I don't think we need to have it in. It's in the community charter.
And which section are you on? 517?
517 A and B.
Yeah, so this is a little awkward for someone like me. I don't have Councillor Richter's notes and the agenda on because I only have one screen. So we're
I don't have a copy of my notes.
Well, it's in here somewhere, but I can't. I know there's a way to do a split
Had a
screen,
long
but I haven't
weekend,
figured that out yet. So you're speaking to something that's on your list, so I think you'll have to direct the rest of council.
So 517 basically explains the requirement for an open meeting.
I have a copy of my
Oh,
notes. I
thank
could
you.
maybe give them to Councillor Long.
That would be
if you'd
lovely.
like. Okay.
Either that or we'll make Suzanne run and get some copies.
That's cooperation.
Can you get some? Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so you're addressing those concerns. Yeah, I've got it now.
You've got everything?
Councillor Richter just gave me a copy. Thank you. Sorry about that. Should have printed it out, I guess.
In Section B, it actually also discusses the purely educational sessions, so the workshop. So what we're trying to do with Section B is make it very plain to people that a workshop is not a council meeting. Although they are open, someone can come if they want. Most of the time, nobody wants to spend the whole day listening to the discussions about what's going to come forward. And staff have been very good about ensuring that the decisions that are made there do come to the council table so that they can be debated in public. So you kind of narrow down your list, the list is brought forward, and then council adopts them there. So it's just A and B are simply to restate that council is done in open sessions and council is accountable to the public. And when we do have discussions about the agenda, those aren't council meetings per se, they're discussions about the agenda. Or if we're having a workshop in order to fulsomely discuss something, that is not necessarily a council meeting as well.
All right, Councillor Richter. Mayor Froese would like to speak to this, right? Same one? Go ahead.
Thanks. No, I appreciate this being in the procedure bylaw. It certainly doesn't contravene the community charter. It supports the community charter. And, we get, a lot of, I can only speak for myself, but you don't always read the community charter when you first get elected, but the procedure bylaw is there, and it makes it very clear the intent of the community charter. So I recall several times as mayor, and the council knows this, we can't discuss this by email, and certainly that doesn't happen very often at all. But at the beginning of my term, I had to send that reminder out because of the transparency of council has to be done in open, and I'm always very cautious about that. So I don't think it hurts leaving it in, taking it out. Certainly if that's what council wants to do, but it certainly does help in, especially new councillors coming on, and each term we've had 3 new members of council, that it's very clear in here what you can and cannot do. And I think it was there for that purpose, just to make it clear that we need to be transparent and discuss in open when there's a quorum, as soon as there's 5 members of council, it's a meeting, and if you're advancing something. So I prefer leaving it in. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Richter, you're back up.
Yeah, I think we could leave it in if we add a phrase up above. So where it says, in support of transparency, add, and charter requirements. So I'd like to make that change.
Okay, so can you help us where that goes in, Ms. Bauer, then? That would be under, like a C?
No, it's in the prelude to A.
The exception of closed meetings?
Yeah. And the next sentence, in support of transparency and charter requirements. The following provisions apply.
That's a good idea. Do you need a motion for that?
Yeah, I made it.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved by Councillor Richter, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. We'll clear the queue. Can we have that? One of my amendments was to have amendments put on the screen. We're going to come to that one day. So
That
what?
was 10 years ago we suggested that, Bob.
I know. So where are we at then? So can I have that wording again? I have to write it in.
It's Section 17. In the preamble there, we would add between the words "in support of transparency" and the word and the following provisions. We would simply change it to say, "In support of transparency and charter requirements, the following provisions apply."
Okay. Says that. Yeah. Well, any objection to that? Do you want to vote on it, or do you want to do the unanimous consent thing? Anybody got? I mean, it's just a small change in wording. It really means the same thing in my mind. But anybody object? Seeing none, unanimous consent, Mr. Mayor. That's the best one. Okay. Okay. And now we're moving on.
No, but the next one on my list is to add a new section 5.8, length of council meetings. No council meeting shall run longer than 2 consecutive hours without a 10-minute break.
Stretch motion. You moving that then?
Yeah, I'm moving that.
Okay, we have to second her for the 10-minute stretch. Second to talk about it. Clearing the queue. Go ahead, Councillor Davis. Somebody push a button. Oh, Mayor Froese beat you to it.
Yeah. I'm gonna pose it. I think if anybody feels the need to stretch and they want to have a break in a meeting, then it's been done. Somebody will say we need a break, so we'll take a break, and I think we can leave it flexible like that because we may be in the 2 hour hits and we're in the middle of a discussion, and then the chair has to be aware of that and break it. I think if anybody wants to take a break, number one, they can step out for a minute. Number two, they can ask for a recess, and we've done that before, so I'm not going to support it. Thanks.
Councillor Davis.
I think where that would be helpful, and I think we've done that before, is when we get those night meetings. They start at 7, and sometimes then we break right into a public hearing. And I know I can't think of a time where I guess my point is I can slip out and relieve myself, and I guess I can slip out and walk around the building too at the same time, but that really takes away from the meeting and the concentration of it. So I do, when we do have a 10-minute break or a 5-minute break, I really do appreciate it. But I don't know if it should be every 2 hours. Like maybe it's every 3 hours or something like that. But also getting everyone started in the audience is kind of like takes a bit to get going too. I just was.
You want to change it, alter it to another time?
Well, can we, instead of saying 2 hours, can we say 3 hours, or is that too long? But just bear in mind you can leave. I'm just thinking of the.
Got a seconder here for 3 hours. Would you like to do that?
7, 8, 9, 10. Well, yeah.
Well, if the meeting's over, then it becomes moot. But if it isn't over,
okay,
then...
as long as Mayor Froese promises that when somebody says, hey, we need a break, we get a break. Because I do know that when you have called breaks, I really like it. It's not Mayor Froese, it's the mayor. The mayor. Okay, sorry, I complicated this.
Okay, carry on. We'll just keep the discussion going then. Councillor Richter?
Well, I don't think it's right. Certainly, if we're in an emergency situation, we can get up and walk out and go use the bathroom. But, everybody who's sitting here knows exactly what we're doing when we do that. And I've had feedback from other people saying that it's very rude to see a councillor get up and walk out in the middle of a discussion. So I think we need to have a planned break so councillors can get up and walk out to attend to their business. It doesn't have to be 10 minutes. It could even be a 5-minute break. I'm okay with 5 minutes. I just don't think we should appear to be rude or disrespectful to the proceedings and or make ourselves target of criticism by doing so.
Thank you. Ms. Bauer, could we have words like should? Could we say something like that council meetings should not, running longer than 2 consecutive hours should have a 10-minute break? Or does that
May?
just...
May is a very well-used word.
Do we have may elsewhere in the policy?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that, Councillor Richter?
Sure, I'm fine with that.
Where would you, no, Councillor Shaw?
No, council meeting may run longer. Okay.
No, is that where we'd put the may?
Yeah, take shall out, replace with may.
Can you help me where that would go, Mr. Backen? It wouldn't go there, though, if you want to change that. So, help?
What do you think?
I'm just, I would have to reword it a little bit.
Okay, not on the fly. How about we come back with that, Councillor Richter? Are you okay with that?
Come back when?
Don't forget this all has to come back to council, right?
No,
perhaps
so I
you
think
could-
I'm sorry. I think we have to turn it around in that case, and we say that council may have a 10-minute break when a meeting is longer than 2 consecutive hours.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Okay, so that's the motion. It was moved by Councillor Richter, and were you still seconding it, Councillor Davis?
It would be okay if we put a 5-minute break?
Sure, I'm okay with 5.
Oh, okay, 5 minutes.
As long as we get a break.
All right, so that's the motion. Right, it's been, anybody object to the changing of the wording, the slight amendment? No objection, so by unanimous consent, with the motion now reads may 5 minutes. And Councillor Whitmarsh?
Yeah, just make a comment. I think the idea of a break is probably helpful. I think that, the 2 hours to me could be sort of a guide in a sense that if we're having an in-depth conversation and hits the 2 hour mark, I don't see the need for the chair to now get a vote to see if we can go longer or anything. I think it's a guide. If it happens to be 2 hours and 15 minutes because we're just finishing up a conversation, I think there should be the flexibility of the chair to decide around that 2 hour mark, will they have a break after we're done this discussion and not feel the need to come back to council to see if we can extend or we have to cut something short or anything like that. I think it's just a guide.
Yeah, I think that would be understood, for sure. I would be careful on that. Okay, anybody else want to speak? So let's call a vote then. Calling the vote. Okay, passes with Mayor Froese opposed. Right? Okay, there you go. All right, so now we've done that. Are we moving into section 6, Councillor Richter?
Yep, next
Your
one is
meeting, by the way.
604. On a deadline.
Yes, I had a
Concern here with regards to the noon. I thought it should be changed to,
Okay.
604.
Okay, 6.04, this, now we're into delegations.
Delegations?
Oh,
No,
it's a
agendas.
deadline for submissions to agenda,
Yeah,
right?
and so I thought it should be, deadline for late delegations is missing. So we need to add in, late delegation requests will be received until 10 a.m. on the day of the meeting.
I believe that's in the delegation section.
That's in the delegation section,
Yeah.
I thought so too,
That's,
yeah.
this is dealing strictly with submissions versus delegations.
Okay, but why noon? Then in that case, why not 10 a.m.? Because just to be consistent with the other deadlines.
So it is noon now? Or is it 10 now? I'm sorry.
Well, that's, I guess, the question. I thought it was 10.
says noon
but
in the
this is
current
saying
one.
Yeah,
noon.
it says noon.
Yeah.
So do you want to change?
And that's just because we try and allow people as much time as possible so we can get the information from council. Quite honestly, most days, as you know, you come back from dinner and things have showed up on your table. We do our very best to get all the information. Noon is the best time to ensure that everything is going to get to the table. We do our best to get everything anyway.
Okay.
Okay,
So you're all right with the noon then? All right.
okay, 6.05.
Okay. Council and,
This is getting the package, so this is going to be a big one, right? This is, you're talking here in 6.05 when the agenda package arrives.
yeah, and whether we need an extra day. I mean, this package is a classic example. Getting that at 6 o'clock on Thursday for noon
That's-
on Monday
yeah,
is
that's-
ridiculous.
That's been forever. So, Mr. Backen, do you want to speak to this? Because this has been like this forever, and there's good reason for it, even though it's challenging. Mr. Backen?
It has been this way for some time. The challenge is the timelines to advance things. I think Ms. Bauer has a bit of a discussion in terms of what it would take to alter it. So perhaps you could begin by outline the process.
I will start by prefacing nothing's impossible. Some things are just more difficult than others. The first thing is, in moving the timelines, most people will probably not like the clerk because she will make people stick to deadlines. What I want to try and avoid is having things slide in at the last minute so there's no transparency for them. So the further we back up things, the more people are going to go, oh, well, I'm just a few hours late, or I'm just a day late, or something like that. I've been reading reports and things. This is actually becoming a problem for a lot of councils. Richmond, when I worked there, they were actually Friday at midnight. I recently see that they actually went to Thursday at 6 p.m. So it is something that it's challenging a lot of councils because, of course, the information age has resulted in more information.
Are there councils that come before Thursday? Because that's what we're talking about. So we're doing Thursday. You're saying other councils are later.
I actually haven't seen anything before a Wednesday or Thursday, and that's more to do with the fact, well, no, that's not true. The regional districts that are far spread and don't have many things on their agendas, they're able to set them earlier.
They do a full week.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but then there's all the emergency stuff that comes on the day
and
before.
this is what we're trying to avoid, is by having it a little bit later, we're trying to avoid the emergency things that slip in. It would take some reconfiguring by staff It would be a problem, especially on weekend or long weekends. We struggle now with the Thursday when we haven't been in on Monday. So as I said, nothing is impossible. Some things are just a little more difficult. But I would need the cooperation of council and senior staff in order to enforce the deadlines so that we don't have a transparency problem.
Wendy, though, but perhaps go back to the beginning and set how the schedule actually works from the Monday, so to speak. Like start with that, with the prep time, how it works together.
So by Monday, just so you're aware, by Monday afternoon, Suzanne has already put a draft agenda on my desk that has the delegations up to date, any notices of motions, any of that information. I then take that to the SMT meeting on Tuesday morning. And by Tuesday morning, all the directors bring in their reports and we slot things in. Staff at that point actually has to have their reports done by Tuesday at 4:30, at which point they're approved by senior staff. On Wednesday, the day is devoted to getting the reports ready to go into the agenda. And Suzanne, again, is still working on the agenda, the actual form where everything goes in. And that's where we attach all the maps, do all the PDFing, and as you know, there's many parts to all those reports that you're reading. So it basically takes staff the full day in order to get all those adjusted. By the end of the day on Wednesday, Suzanne basically has a good idea of what's on the agenda. It looks pretty good, pretty tight. And then we get the phone call saying, oh, there's one last thing to go. And we try very hard to make sure those one last thing go on the agenda so that they are out for the public. Thursday in the Legislative Services Department is confusing. We have agendas going down to be print. They all come back. They all have to be proofed. You'll notice how long that was. Yes, we actually proofed all that on Thursday. By Thursday, our aim is to have Thursday at 4 o'clock, we get it out. So backing it up a day will present challenges, especially on, say there's a Monday that's a stat holiday. So we've lost that day that week. We're now backing into the next week, which backs all the staff up. As I said, nothing is ever impossible. It's just going to take a little bit of reorganization of deadlines. Stat holidays will become a greater problem. Not that we wouldn't be able to handle it. We would figure it out.
Mr. Chair, if I could just provide one bit of information that the clerk missed, which is items that require public notification go back to actually the Friday before the council meeting, because that is a deadline for items to be mailed out.
That's a factor too.
It is a factor in that if we move the deadline for the agenda up much more than that, it would mean that there would be a lag time between the mail out, because we wouldn't be able to get the agenda put together and out within the given timelines for the mail out.
Now, Mr. Chair, the point may be, are there other ways then to reduce the volume of the agenda? One of the topics we've discussed, for example, is for non-contentious items providing third reading after the public hearing. That would take a large chunk of the package out of the process for a while. Likewise, matters for final adoption. Can those matters be simplified then in terms of the package itself being more streamlined to usual information?
But if you don't mind me saying, there's nobody else on the speaker list, we're not really talking about the thickness of the package is an issue, but it doesn't mean that you have, if you're getting a report because you're doing third reading, the report's there for your reference, but doesn't mean you have to read the whole report again. We've already had it, right? So there's part of that. Now, we've also discussed earlier about the third meeting. Certainly, if there's going to be more frequent meetings, then each agenda is going to be smaller, theoretically. Councillor Arneson.
Yes, well, thank you. My 2 cents is we started this conversation in the last term, and I understand from staff's perspective and the coordination that's required, and it is challenging. My thought is, I wonder if we've ever considered some kind of prioritization. For example, staff could have the discretion to make a determination if we had, for example, from their perspective, a very heavy council agenda, that some of the staff reports or bylaw revisions or things that were not time sensitive could be adjusted to a different date. Because if we're talking about other opportunities, it seems to me, for me, yeah, it's true. If I read something for first and second, then it comes, at the public hearing, it's pretty aware of what that is, and so I'm still looking at it. But at the same time, if I'm getting novel information on top of that, and it's very lengthy, and staff I know have dedicated a lot of time to that, but I don't know anything about it until Thursday night. That's part of my challenge, is to consider the degree to which I'm reluctant to do that without maybe getting, more time to consider it or asking more questions. But to me, it is a prioritization as much as something else to consider if there are opportunities to take some of those things and put them onto lesser agendas.
And in fact, we do that.
Okay.
That is part of our Tuesday morning discussion. For example, several council meetings ago, we were supposed to have a presentation on emergency services. It hasn't come back because we haven't been able to fit it in yet.
Yeah, so I have to remind us that because we only have the 2 meetings, obviously the agenda package is going to be larger. So we're discussing potentially other meetings that's going to reduce everything. So next is Mayor Froese.
Thanks. First of all, just I know casting my mind back to when for my first term, we had more than 2 meetings a month. It made it very challenging for staff to get minutes ready and set the agenda and everything for that many meetings. And that's why I was suggesting earlier, maybe a CPC meeting or public hearing or something's on alternate Mondays or something like that. But just having said that, I want to ask a question. Some councils meet on Tuesday. Does that give an extra day, or is it still the same problem? We just moved it over. I know there's quite a few councils, I don't know how many, but I know there's other councils in the Metro Vancouver region that meet Tuesday nights instead of Monday nights. Gives council another additional day to read the agenda. And on that, I don't find the agenda that big an issue. I have all weekend to read it, and that's what I'm paid to do, so I have no problem doing that. But they are big, and but I just want to ask that question about Tuesday meetings.
That must be why, do you know?
Anecdotally, when I see the news on Tuesday morning, I usually hear about everybody's meetings. My only proviso with Tuesday is I'd have to talk to Mr. Seffi about the mailing schedule, so long as we could still get the cards in and out on time. Likely it could be done.
It's a suggestion. It's just, I know some do, and I was wondering if that allows for that extra additional day, and it leaves the weekend for your...
In that case, we would still put the agendas out on Thursday night for you.
That's right.
Okay.
But that's going to take time off the other end, isn't it?
Yes.
Because now staff are busy working
So
with
it
council's
is no-
decision on Tuesday, then on Wednesday you have to try and figure out what council was doing. So that means, so if you want the meetings on Tuesday, you'll get the agenda Friday, I think.
Well, we try hard not to, but
Hard.
Yeah, it's still 2
If
weeks.
we go every week, it's a challenge. But if it's 2 weeks apart still, and then find items like a CPC that can be on the alternate Monday, which, you know, is a separate agenda, which you have time to prepare. But if you're preparing a regular meeting, afternoon and evening and closed, having that every week is very challenging for staff, and I know that was one of the considerations in doing it the way we do. But maybe, it would take some research with other municipalities who are doing Tuesdays, and just to see how they're managing through that. Because there are some in Metro. I can't recall off the top of my head, but I know discussion with other folks at Metro that they're talking about Tuesday meetings.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Woodward, you're up.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to have any specific suggestions on how to solve it, but I'm going to sort of just relay some of my comments also for senior staff. So for the example that I would use is the recent revision to the subdivision and servicing bylaw, where you read in the report that staff have been working on it for 2 years, and I get it for 3 days. And I don't find that to be a necessarily functional process. So it's not about having the weekend to read it. It's about the length of time that the Township of Langley is working on a revision. That's a lot of effort and time goes into it. And for some of us that really want to dig into maybe pursue some additional reforms or really understand that, really just don't have the opportunity to do that. And I'll just leave it at there. Thanks.
Okay. Not to jump over that, but I mean, we do refer things for that reason. I think that's what we did with that one. We said, okay, this is...
We approved it without comment.
Councillor Richter's up.
Yeah, the Tuesday idea is an interesting one, but then Councillor Long's right. It just pushes it back a day because senior management will then meet on Wednesday mornings instead of Tuesday mornings, which means that we probably couldn't get our packages until Friday instead of Thursday. So it's an idea, but I can't see it necessarily solving the problem. I guess having listened to the schedule that staff is working with, maybe we just need to leave it the way it is. But Councillor Woodward makes a very good point, and that is, yeah, if staff's been working on something for a long period of time and then we get 3 days to read it, that it doesn't seem like we're doing it proper justice.
Okay, but it has to come on the agenda, so staff can only put it on the agenda. I guess what I was trying to say is that if it's something that is not time sensitive, is a very large document, why wouldn't we consider deferring it for an extra week, and I'm sure we did do that with something anyway. But staff, would they put a note saying that this is, we've been working on this for 2 years, and if you need, it can be considered at this meeting or subsequent meeting? Yeah.
No, we could, Mr. Chair. I'm just trying to digest the comments. I'm not sure it's the timing as much as it is the involvement in the process of the creation of the instrument itself. That's what we have to reflect a bit upon, because I think the suggestion is that there could be deeper dives on some of the topics. Subdivision and control bylaw is a good example. Could that be done through a committee process or a council process or something like that? Once we could identify those issues, it certainly could be. It's just simply a matter of identifying the issues and trying to figure out the best vehicle to do so. So I don't know if that's as much a timing issue as a policy development issue in terms of thinking it through very preliminarily.
I would agree, and I think it's fairly unique to a couple of reports that we're referring to here. In fact, over my time, I don't know if we were that interested in some of these in-depth housekeeping ones, which now apparently Council is more interested in, which is a good thing.
Okay, and the other thing too is that, as far as I'm aware, the councillor job is a part-time job, which allows us councillors to have other jobs, which some of us do have, and moving the meetings to a Tuesday is definitely going to impact our work schedules, our other work schedules.
Yeah, good point.
Also, with regards to this, I wanted to add into the title of this, agenda available to council and the public, because it just says to the public. And then we would also need to add in under 6.05 when council would get the package, which is 6 p.m. on the fourth day of the calendar month, or the fourth calendar day preceding the meeting.
Okay. Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, I think that Councillor Long, my points, we can certainly, if we get something of length and something of merit that involves an awful lot of research, and we can certainly refer parts of it back or vote or ask for separation or do a few other things, refer it to another type of meeting for more discussion. Some, depending on time sensitive, as experience comes along, we get better at getting through the information, and also perhaps, it's just an idea of maybe having the staff members available to comment on report information or report longevity information in the report and the like. So there's always an opportunity, and we're all used to seeing long reports. We've got one in our agenda tonight, but much of it, I always phone, I'm sure, phone or email or another method with staff and check on items that of significance or flagged or important. So I think there's always that opportunity to discuss it further, even though it is a significant amount. Second thing is on the Tuesday. You see, sometimes there's other meetings on Tuesday evening, committee meetings or Metro Vancouver or other things, and also for the people that work, it's tough. So I don't have a big zeal to change it to Tuesday. Those are my comments.
Yeah, do you know how often we have a holiday on a Monday that kind of impacts whether we meet on a Monday or not? And if we do have a holiday on a Monday, could we just, if it's planning it for, next year, that we actually have the meeting on the Tuesday so everyone knows ahead of time? And then maybe that takes care of some of the backlog when we don't have a meeting, making that next meeting a 12-hour meeting. I don't know, it's just a thought.
I think, well, the stats are about once a month, right?
I think the answer may be in the rotation. When you take into account, on average, one stat per month, 2 council meetings per month, and the committee meetings that go forth with that, that don't occupy the Monday but occupy that week, we have a very full schedule. But I think the suggestion of the third meeting, whether it be floating being a Monday or a Tuesday, if we set it early enough, could be helpful, depending upon how we structure it. So I think that relates a bit to the other concept of Section 5, and something we could certainly look at.
Moving on to Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, I'm just going to add to that on the subdivision servicing bylaw comments. So when we got it at the last meeting, there was some items that maybe I could have expanded on. But if I'd referred it back, I would have made it impossible to adopt it prior to the summer break. So then we would have had multiple months going on where a lot of good reforms wouldn't have been adopted for months and months, potentially 2 months more, 2 months longer, which is why I didn't do that. bringing us back to the same sort of core comment, which is that maybe there's a way, and again, I don't think it's a procedure bylaw issue, but a way to give us some advanced look at some of these major reforms before they come forward in a final form, to try to mitigate some of this concern of trying to digest a huge reform in a small amount of time. Thanks.
And so we have no motion, and there's nobody else on the speaker list. So do you want to make a motion? You want to push your button?
Add agenda available to council and the public.
Right, so is that okay? That's,
The sentence at the end of 6:05.
The agenda be made available to council by 6 p.m.
Yeah, I've noted those.
Do we need
so that's
a
not a
motion
major,
on it?
that's what we're doing anyway, but it kind of clarifies.
Okay.
All
So
right.
we're going to do that. Okay.
Okay, so we're going to move on.
6.07 is basically with regards to the adding of late items to the agenda. I was wondering if we could post it online or in our posting place or once council's adopted it, so community knows that we're...
So once council adopted the change, you want us to go back and change the agenda?
No, adding of late items to the agenda requires a majority vote or unanimous consent of council at the time of the adoption of the meeting agenda. Is there some way that we could post that for the public to be aware that council will be making a decision on adding that, so they know ahead of time that there's additional items for the agenda?
I don't know that that's easily done in that I'm here. And to get it posted usually requires me to do something, and I'm here.
Okay.
You could clone me. But yeah, no, that would, I mean, like I say, nothing's ever impossible. It's just, I don't quite know how to do that.
Thanks.
Okay. Third day reading of public hearing. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's already been proposed to be added. That's
Yeah, we had agreed to do council motions for third reading at the actual public hearing, but I recalled us having a discussion only if there's been no submissions received, as well as I think we decided on a 2/3 majority vote.
Is that what it is now? What is the proposal?
I think it's just a simple majority at this point. I didn't note down that it was supposed to be a 2/3. And my question on that actually was, so the 2/3 that you proposed, would it be 2/3 to take the vote?
Yes.
Or 2/3 to pass the vote? Or
No,
pass the
2/3 to take,
Okay,
because
so
we have to
it would be a
vote on
two-step
voting
process.
on it, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't this say we have to vote on voting to give it third reading?
I believe the discussion around that was, I don't know that we have got as far as saying
Right.
there was a vote for it.
So what we've got so far is saying it may happen.
It may happen at the direction
Now we're
of
talking
council.
about how that may happen.
Yes.
So we've got two steps. The second step's not even in here, but
Yeah.
I mean, the
Because
first
at
step
that
was
point,
to
we
say.
were just discussing it was going to be
Yeah.
the direction of council, and we hadn't really discussed how it would be directed by council.
Mayor Froese would like to speak to this. Okay, Councillor Richter?
Sure.
Go ahead.
You know, I always think there's a lot of procedures and tools in the council's toolbox to use. To put so much in procedure on how we're going to do it and where we're going to do it, I think restricts council. To say that there are no, just for example, if we said, well, anyone that didn't have any delegations we could vote on, but it might be a delegation that's frivolous, and we've had several of those delegations in the past that come down that are completely frivolous, but then that would tie our hands on this. I think there are a lot of ways that council can differ, if this was, and I'm thinking of the way other councils do it. This is on their third reading nights. They consider it. It doesn't mean that you have to pass it. You can refer it to the next meeting, and any member of council can do that. So I don't want to restrict members of council on how they want to address these issues. But if we restrict it to, well, if there's one delegation or two or three or none, they may be all frivolous. And we've had those delegations in the past where one person comes up, it's, I'm not going to mention names, but I think those from last term know who I'm talking about, which would restrict us. I think we need to allow council to make those decisions. And I certainly agree if, ones that are controversial, we want to digest and take more time. Any member of council can make that motion to defer it to the next meeting to give us that time. So my feeling is this is good, but it's up to whatever council likes, because I think we have the tools. Thank you.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, this could be tricky, this kind of procedural. I think that not all delegations are frivolous. Some actually have some merit and some point out, and that gives council an opportunity to, move to make a motion to have it on the next third reading night or the next council meeting, which we currently do. I think this is an opportunity to try something, and I wouldn't want to feather it or make it more difficult by adding another piece to it. I think perhaps we can review it a year or a year and a half from now, whether that's working. But I think right now, let's give it a try. I don't think, have we used it at all yet?
There was one occasion where, sorry to interrupt, there was one occasion where we considered it, but it actually didn't happen.
Yeah, we considered it, but the feeling, I believe, by council was that they weren't ready to make that decision that evening, so it fell aside. At this point, it takes a variance of the bylaw to do it, because the bylaw states that it would be at the next meeting.
Okay.
So it's a one-off.
Right, so what this is doing is, sorry to interrupt, is allowing, the procedure bylaw now allows that to happen, so we don't need to have a variance motion.
Okay, so my only point is
Doesn't mean it has to.
Want to feather it with another 2/3. I just want to take it the way it is, see how well it works, and move accordingly.
So you mean what's in green already on here?
I'm happy with. I don't want to feather it with another 2/3.
If this is going to work properly, Councillor Whitmore should be next, but it didn't work properly.
Okay. Well, I'm still not clear on how this is supposed to work, because does this mean we can do third reading on everything at the public hearing?
It says may, is what it says. So I guess it depends on what circumstances there would be.
Well, but what's the criteria for doing third reading? Just because the mayor says it's okay?
I wonder if we should put the words by council decision, which is going to be required anyway. So, I mean, if you put may be by council decision considered at the same meeting, would that work for you?
Yeah, that would work for me.
Can we
And
insert
what would
those
work
words,
even
which is actually
better
what
is
has
by
to happen
2/3
anyway?
majority vote.
She nodded. Council, you nodded on that.
Yeah, I'm just
So,
writing down, maybe by council decision considered at the same meeting.
Councillor Whitmarsh?
Yeah, just for clarification on the section 609 here. So it says that at the last sentence that no further submissions have been received. Is that meant to mean that no submissions? I'm confused by the word further.
Well, I'm speaking of the no further ones that you've already received, because during a public hearing, we quite often actually are still receiving submissions during the meeting, which is why I'm usually looking at
By
my
email,
iPad.
you mean?
Written
By email.
submissions.
Yeah, by email and written submissions. So I want to ensure that before the public hearing on that item is completely concluded and you pass something, that you have all the information before you. So if it inquired are there any further submissions, so anything further than what you've received, and I can reply no, I haven't had anything come in, or I haven't been handed anything, then you would be able to go forward if you wanted to have a vote.
The mayor would have closed the public submission portion by that time,
Yeah.
so that would have to have occurred before this could happen
Okay,
too.
So this means that there has been no verbal submissions. No one has come forward, and there's been no written
I
submissions.
should specify, just written submissions, because those are the ones that I was trying to guard against council not receiving prior to making the decision. So those would be the emails or things people hand to me during the meeting.
Right. Okay. So we could have had 10 speakers come and speak to us, and then we get confirmation from yourself that there's no further written submissions, and then we could decide, even though we've had 10 speakers speak verbally, we could still decide to take third reading that night.
Yeah,
That's the
it
way
would
this is
be
written.
after the mayor's closed the public portion. There's nothing else to add.
So very interesting. That means that the mayor probably should say, are there any further submissions? And then maybe look to the clerk and say, do you have any more emails?
Well, in those
Not
cases,
emails, but any further
in those
submissions
cases,
from
we
you.
put them on the next distribution list with the proviso that they were received prior to the end of the public hearing.
I know. Okay. All right. I hear you. Okay.
Okay, so then what would happen if that's the case? Then someone on council would have to make a motion to move to third reading,
Yes.
the way this
But I'd be
is.
concerned about that. That means if you got an email right there, we haven't seen it.
And that would be why
But then you couldn't do
the
it.
chair inquires, and I would say no.
have
You
some
haven't-
written
you have-
submissions,
there are
so we
written
should not be
submissions you have
making the
not seen.
decision because we haven't had a chance to read those.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Froze, or whatever comes up.
Okay.
Yeah, it is you.
Councillor Long, Mayor Frost. No, it's a good discussion, and I think council will be aware of that. Certainly, that's a really good point that Councillor Whitmarsh raised and Ms. Bauer confirmed, is that we have to make sure that we've heard all the submissions, and that can't taint the public hearing. And there's case law around that. We have to hear that, so that's important. But tonight is a good example. We're probably going to, 6 public hearings or something like that, 5 or 6 on the agenda. And they're going to wait 7 weeks for third reading. And, it's certainly, I think, and many of them may have, some delegations that we can understand, we can decide on. It may not have any delegations. But we, by making those decisions, we would have, they get their third reading, can carry on with business and don't have to wait 7 weeks. It's a great example, and I always see this at Christmas break and summer break. So I think in that way, I think council is aware enough and astute enough to make those decisions on the night to say, you know what, we want more time. And I think we've all been pretty respectful of members of council to say, I need more time and support referrals. So I would, but there's a lot that I think we can make a decision. So I think, as Councillor Ferguson said, let's see how this works. And there's a lot of safeguards there to ensure that the public hearing is not jeopardized. And that's the important thing, is we don't jeopardize a public hearing. And everybody has had a chance to be heard by council. But really, for all intents and purposes, after tonight, after hearing those public hearings, we're not going to be able to receive any information for the next 7 weeks. Some of them we could probably decide on tonight very quickly. But we're going to have to wait 7 weeks.
So currently we'd have to make a special amendment to the bylaw.
If we wanted to do that tonight. Tonight might not be the right time because it's a long agenda, but certainly we could, and that's the point of having maybe public hearings on a separate night. Then you have time to really consider everything, and it allows for that.
Okay, so we did put the words in by council decision, so we understand that that council has to vote on it. Any more discussion? Councillor Richter?
I'm very concerned if we are going to do this, that now that we've got the clarification to Councillor Whitmarsh's point that 10 people could speak and then we're going to give it third reading. I believe if that's the case, then we need by 2/3 council majority decision, because there are situations where this could be abused. For example, we're talking about tonight's agenda. There are some applications coming forward from developers who gave substantial amounts of money to some members of council and not to others. And so the public could perceive that as special favoritism to that particular developer on the grounds of campaign donations. Now, we all know that campaign donations have nothing to do with...
Okay, Councillor, can we just keep it to the two? So you're saying...
I think it should be, if we're going to make a decision to vote on something at the meeting, to give it third reading at the meeting, it needs to be a 2/3 majority.
So your amendment would be, because we already inserted the word by council decision, now it's going to be by 2/3 council decision.
Yeah.
All right, is there a seconder? Go ahead.
Can I second it?
Just for discussion, yeah. Hang on a sec, we're clearing the queue. Push your button, please. We'll do this thing right. There we go.
Who makes the decision? Like, sometimes if we just get the vote, I don't like that because I want to say why I want to talk about what. Okay, how does it? Sometimes you say no. You won't allow us to talk. I guess if somebody.
Well, if you're tabling a motion, there's a few things that say there's no discussion.
No,
if you want to challenge the chair,
I'm talking about. All of a sudden we say, okay, let's move this forward, and I'll say, well, I don't want to, but I want to talk about why I don't want to. Or so is it just to clarify that? Is it just a decision that we're just making a decision, or do we get to open the debate on why we should be moving it?
If we're going to give third reading at the public hearing, then it should be by a 2/3 council majority decision.
With no discussion, is what I think I'm hearing.
No discussion. Or discussion.
I guess you'd have to discuss it.
No, you don't. There are some that do and some that don't. So what's the rules on that?
Yeah.
It would fall to our procedure bylaws. That's not something that's given in the community charter.
Because I hear what you're saying, and it's a chance that we could be discussing this thing twice. We're going to
Yes.
have a huge half-an-hour discussion on whether we should do it. Needs a two-third vote. It finally passes, then we start all over again and discuss it another time. So I wonder if that's an interesting point, that it would be a two-thirds decision to discuss it.
Yeah. 2/3.
So is that your motion?
Yeah, because we've added in here, may be by council decision considered at the same meeting. I just want to add in, may be by 2/3 majority council decision.
Mr. Chair, Wendy,
Yes.
could you, do you ever have any recollection what other communities are doing? I think many do have third readings after the public hearing, but I don't know the numbers.
Many do. Sorry for interrupting, but the question
Many-
here is, what's the criteria for it?
Right, correct.
There is no criteria for it. It's the community charter is silent. I believe the majority of councils actually do entertain them after public hearing or
But I
during
think,
public hearing.
and I know that too, that what it is, it's the opposite. Instead of saying, shall we discuss that, it automatically is, and then there's a motion to say, well, I'd like to put it off for a week because we've got so much
They are
things
they are
that
actually
came up.
scheduled in the agenda for decision.
Okay, so on this two-thirds, how do you want to go? Any more discussion on that? Oh, lots of them. Wow, thank you. Councillor Whitmarsh. This
Yeah,
is
I
on the
think-
two-third, adding the two-thirds, and whether it's discussion or not hasn't been moved.
Yeah, I think I think the reason we're doing this is for those items that are more clear-cut, we want to move them forward and make decisions quicker. For those items that are less clear-cut, or there's more information to digest, or we're not sure as a council or individuals where we want to go, we want more time. So to me, if we're moving towards where they're fairly clear-cut, it should also be fairly clear-cut across council that we want to move this forward and not be controversial. So I'm supportive of the two-thirds, but I'm probably also leaning toward I would not want to see a lot of discussion around that. I'd rather just have a vote on two-thirds. If it passes, now we're discussing. If it doesn't, it's moved on to the next item for third reading, as we normally do anyways. So all it is an opportunity to move those that are fairly clear-cut faster through the system, and two-thirds is a good number on something that should be clear-cut. And if it's not two-thirds, then it's not clear-cut, and therefore we wait till the next
So
meeting.
the chair will need to determine that. Okay. Councillor Woodward, you're next.
Yeah, this was moved and seconded. I just want to clarify we're
Yes,
actually
it was
debating
moved
a
and
motion
seconded
for
to add the words
two-thirds.
two-thirds in there.
Yeah, I also support the requirement for a minimum of two-thirds on granting third reading at the public hearing. But I also would support the idea of no need to debate that. It either passes on its own or it doesn't. And rather, I agree, I don't want to discuss items twice as well.
So put 2/3 majority
Without debate.
council decision without debate.
Without debate.
Okay,
That's something
I'd
that,
put that in.
just to move it
Okay,
along.
So that's an amendment.
Is that unanimous? Or?
Let's see, who would object to adding those words? Okay, no objection, so adding those words, that's part of the motion that we're debating right now. Mayor Froese.
Well, I think I kind of understand the movers' reasons for this. But then what's the point of having this? We already have that ability to, by two-thirds vote, decide to vary the procedure bylaw. That's already in place, is that correct, Ms. Bauer?
Yes, it is.
So we can already, by two-thirds vote, vary the procedure bylaw and consider a third reading. So if this comes in, it's a waste of time, take this out. The whole idea is to expedite some of these third readings, as many other councils do. And it's no different than when it shows up 2 weeks later on our agenda. Here's third reading. Here's the public hearing, third reading, moved and seconded. I want more information, refer it to the next meeting, which we do quite often at third reading when it comes 2 weeks later. As we say, I'd like to refer this to staff to address the concerns from the delegations or the public, and various things that we have to do. But putting this in, it just makes this whole section 6.09 useless, and may as well just not even bother, because we already have that ability to, by two-thirds vote, vary the procedure bylaw. So I'm not supporting it. I think the intent is lost. The idea is to be a more efficient council and try and reduce some of the time that we're spending on some of these things, and also be more helpful to the business community that come in front of us and then have to wait several weeks for us to make a decision when we're not receiving any more information. So I can't support that. Thanks.
Sorry.
I was suggest we take it right out then.
Councillor
No point
Ferguson.
in it.
Oh, yeah, I think that, I'm not going to support the two-thirds, but I think that we really haven't given it the opportunity to try. And I think some of the debate around the two-thirds could easily be resolved by just a straight motion of council. I know watching Surrey do it, some nights they had no submissions at all. The public hearing, they went through their agenda, they had a brief discussion on it, and they moved it forward, and some of it were simpler things and things that were needed more debate. Even when there was very little discussion at the public hearing, some members of council felt it was important to take another look at it, being a fairly large project. I think it was a shopping center or something like that, and they waited. They moved to make the decision at the next meeting. So it works, but putting this extra layer really. I think we're just a little bit early for that. I think we should give it a chance. So I'm not going to support 2/3. I understand where other members of council are coming from, but I don't think it's important.
Thank you. Councillor Richter.
Well, we've never done this before, and I think we need to proceed cautiously towards doing it, which is why I think we do need the 2/3 majority without debate. And if it turns out that this becomes too cumbersome, which I doubt it will be, we can remove it at some subsequent review of the procedure bylaw. But little steps first, and I think this is a good little step.
Yeah, well, technically correct. Of course, that any variance can occur, 2/3 majority to do something different. When that was done, I think a couple of months ago, in an attempt to be constructive and get somebody a quick decision, I got multiple calls from consultants. Why is that person special and why am I not special? And so I think by, even if it's in the procedure bylaw, my opinion is that if it's in there and it's documented that we have this option and we use it and it's normal course of action, we can point to it, say there it is, and we do that when someone on council moves it and seconds it, and it's a normal part of our procedure. If it's not in there, now I'm getting calls. Why is it a special favor for them and not for me? But if it's in there, then it's not.
Trigger then, I hear you. Councillor Whitmarsh, thank you.
Yeah, I guess I support it being here in the procedural bylaws. I think it is helpful. I think it puts a different tone on it than the possibility that we can change things. It actually specifically states that it's available to us. And for me, the 2/3 majority, I think that if we had 5-4 votes on something happening that evening, I think there just could be the perception that something's trying to be rushed through or something. I just think the 2/3 is a good number. I think if it's an obvious case that it should be done, 2/3 shouldn't be any problem reaching it anyways. And if it's a 5-4 vote, I'd rather give it the 2 more weeks and have time in which then a 5-4 vote could of course rule the day, but give us time to digest it. So if we're going to do it quick, it should be at 2/3.
Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you. It's interesting to hear all the comments back and forth. When I look at this, and I resonate with Councillor Richter's comments in particular about that this is something novel, and also Councillor Woodward saying, well, what about the individuals that feel in some way, whether rightly or wrongly, from their point of view, and it's a lot about optics, that they are being somehow disadvantaged by a system where if we don't have the language that indicates prescriptively how we're going to deal with it, I think it's helpful to our process because it does make us appear to be more transparent. And I agree that we do have other mechanisms at our disposal. But I think in doing our best, what we have to consider is sometimes what it looks like. And so I think what it looks like is if you can direct people to say, well, it's a 2/3 vote, then people have a clearer understanding of the fact that in addition to whatever comments I have, such as some of these applications would be disadvantaged because they are relatively simple, there's no other concerns about it, and we've decided, that by the will of council, we will allow them to go forward in a timely manner. So that's my long-winded way of saying I agree with the 2/3, and I think that putting some prescriptive language around it is helpful in our procedures bylaw.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to call the vote. I just wanted to say I think we're trying to make things clear and sort of put the rules down so we all understand what's going on. And so by adding this, we know the mayor will say, do we want to just decide on this tonight? It'll take a 2/3 vote to do so, and then the discussion would start. That's because we've added the words without debate. So we'll call the vote. We'll call this A3, I guess. Passes with Councillor Ferguson and Mayor Froese opposed.
And may I pose one further question then? Is the expectation that all items on a public hearing agenda will now, in the agenda, have the two-thirds question after them?
What I thought I heard is that a council would make the motion.
Well, in this
consider
case,
it.
if it's going to be on two-thirds for anything, would it be more transparent that the motion is put down underneath each one?
Okay, I need some help, I guess. What I thought I heard was the council would have to make a motion. I would like to consider third reading tonight. It would have to be seconded, there'd be no debate, and it would require two-thirds. So if that doesn't happen, then it's not done. But the mayor would say now, because in the green it says the word may is in there. And in fact, he's going to be reading this, is he not? Is he going to be not reading? Is this not being added to the preamble? I thought I saw a preamble here somewhere.
I'm just looking for clarification if the intent is
But you were adding the green on the bottom of an example in one of these things, which showed the public hearing.
And this is fine, but I'm just wondering, for transparency purposes, if council is going to be at each meeting after each application discussing whether they're going to have a vote on it, is it more transparent to put that on each application and then council would determine at the time?
But currently, it doesn't say at the bottom of any one that, there's only one preamble at the beginning of the meeting that it pertains to all of them, right? And so the mayor would be saying in the preamble to all of them that it may, by council decision, two-thirds without debate, be discussed tonight.
Great.
So everybody knows when the meeting starts that could happen. But it would be only triggered, from my understanding, by a council actually
Fine.
making that
I just wanted to make
motion.
sure I had it in the right place.
And that sort of enables the whole thing. Okay, we've got quite a speakers list now.
No, I just wanted to clarify. If we put it on the agenda, then it's a shall, it's not a may. And this is a may. And I agree with what Councillor Long's saying. If a member of council or even the mayor, as he's chairing the meeting, says, well, look, we haven't had any applications or any submissions, is council willing to consider third reading?
Yep. No, I just wanted to make sure I clearly understood.
And I wouldn't mind knowing if that were to happen. Does it happen right after the mayor calls the public section closed for that item and the proponents kind of done their thing? Is that when the vote happens, or does it happen at the end of the meeting?
That would be the call of the chair.
How does it happen in the other places? I wouldn't mind knowing.
Generally, they're done directly after.
Right. So in other words, the mayor would close. Any more comments? No.
So we go
Proponent
through
speaks.
all of them.
Then we say, Madam Clerk, has there been any more submissions? And you'll say no. Then I guess he'll look around. If no motion's made, we move on.
Yeah. It also does allow people to go home because then it's concluded at the same time.
Okay. That's right. Mayor Froese, you want to speak to that?
Just
Did we vote on this yet?
for transparency, so we don't get emails and messages from people saying why is that one being treated differently than I am being treated or others are being treated. With this decision, I think it should be on the agenda each time, and we have that vote because why are we treating some different than others? And then if it goes down, it goes down. We move on to the next item. There's no debate. It's very quick. So this council made a decision to do two-thirds. So when the public hearing for, say, C1 closes, I then ask for a motion, and if there's no motion, we move on. But I mean, it's a motion to hear third reading, and third reading should be there so that the information has to be there for us to make that to consider it. I think it should be there, just to be transparent to everybody that no one's being treated differently. That all of a sudden we pick one, and we're going to do this one and not the other one. At least go through the motions if we're going to be doing it that way. It's my thoughts. Thanks.
Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, I could probably go either way on this one. I mean, I don't want those calls saying, okay, well, this person got a motion on council. How'd they do that? Who are they talking to? And why did they get a motion to move third reading, yet mine didn't? And then now maybe the volume of communication that I'm going to get is going to double because everyone's going to want third reading and has to now get some councillor to make a motion to do that. So I think it is probably, I'm not going to be debated a little bit more, but I think I would like to see it on the agenda, and then maybe somebody has to move it. Maybe there's a middle ground there, but some way that it's listed under everybody's application. And if there's a couple people that feel that it is close enough to the line to approve right away, that we don't debate it, we just vote on it, and then rather than nice and quick, rather than, get these calls about how does this person get their motion and I don't get mine, and that's not the intent here. The intent here is to speed it up. So unless there's some serious objections to putting it on the agenda, we could at least try it as well for a quarter or two and see how it's working. Thanks.
Councillor Richter?
Well, in that case, what the mayor's proposing is a removal of the word may and insertion of the word shall, and I think we need to have a vote on that.
Can you give us an example 'cause on tonight's public hearing then? So where would these words be? Because it doesn't say that on currently that it's going. We only say it once at the beginning of the meeting.
I believe if I'm understanding everything, we would have at the bottom of where we traditionally put a clerk's note in, we could put in that we would put in one of our standard motions of moved by, seconded by, that council direct that the application go forward to third reading.
Yep, go ahead.
So, for example, rather than recommendation, you could put possible third reading or something like that in there, and then the motion's written, we can just move it or not move it.
We would write it as a positive recommendation,
Yeah.
and then it would be up to council to defeat it.
Yeah.
So we try and keep it simple by going to the positive so that when people are reading the minutes, they understand. So it would have to be a positive recommendation, and then council could defeat it.
Where would it appear then? I'm looking at tonight's agenda here, so I know
I'm
that
proposing
it would,
well, normally we
would
have
say
to
it in the front.
No, well, it would be in the preamble in front, but then after each public hearing application. So I would conclude the motion after the entire spiel that goes with it. I think be the easiest place to find
Okay,
it.
so right now it says submissions from the public, explanation by proponent, and then you put
below
a third
that.
line,
We put it below
consideration
that.
of third reading.
Yes, because the motion should be after you've heard everyone. So it should go at the end.
Has to be 2/3 though. Yeah. Okay. Okay, all right, so what are we changing here?
Or should it be
The
shall?
May always gives you the option of not doing it. It's just a procedural thing that staff would include it all the time until council decided that maybe they wanted to try something else.
Okay, so we have may right now.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a motion to change may to shall? 'Cause that's what I think I'm hearing. No? All right,
Can I
let me,
ask another question, Mr. Chair?
sure, you're up there already.
I can solve this.
There you go.
Would it be possible maybe to add a 6.10 that would just add that you'll add the motion on the agendas rather than worry about the language of may or shall?
Yeah.
You could just add another 6.10, blah, 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 the intent being that the motion would appear for council's consideration on the agenda or something like that.
Let's just put
If
the
that's
following
helpful,
motion,
Mr. Chair.
and we can use the same one.
Councilor Whitmarsh?
Yeah, I think, if we change it to shall, that would require us to do, based on the ruling, to have a third reading each time, and I don't think that was necessarily the intent. I think the idea was that it could be considered, so I'm happy with keeping it at may.
Yeah.
May does give the ability if council wishes not to move it.
Correct.
If we put must or shall, then council must move it.
You must move it every time, and I don't think I'd want to be tied to that, so I think
Right.
I'd
So
rather have it as
May allows that.
Okay, so is council clear then? Because we're going to call the vote, because that's the way I feel too, unless there's a motion to change that. We're still going with may. All right, let's call the vote now.
What's the vote on?
And we're adding in what Councillor Woodward suggested, 6.10?
Yeah, we better go back and start over here.
So the clarification would be we leave it as may, and that we add a 6.10 that would be that the following motion be included in the agenda after each public hearing application, and it would basically be a positive that council will debate third.
Fair, and it's just sitting there, anybody can move it, and it's fair for everyone.
Yeah, it's on the agenda that way that no one can say it's not transparent, and then council has the option of moving it or not moving it at that point.
Okay, we're all clear on that? I think I am.
Maybe your 6.10 has to say that too. Council has the option
Yeah.
of moving it or not moving it.
Okay, I can
Okay.
include that in the notes, yep.
And don't forget, this is coming back to council for us to have another peek at. Are we all clear? Let's do the vote. Oh, I think I pushed the wrong number. Does that matter? Doesn't matter.
We voting on Shell?
No, it's done.
May.
Pass unanimous.
Not me, I just
We're moving on. Yeah, you did very well, Councillor Ferguson. Okay, let's go to the next, because now it's 1:30.
It's got to be without debate.
Okay, so 7.02, I had a clarification on this one because, and I'm thinking back to a previous mayor, definitely not this one, where if two council members made a request in writing for a special hearing or meeting, that mayor would ignore it. So the way this is worded says two or more council members may in writing request the mayor.
Yes.
Do we need to have the mayor in there? Can we just say may?
Actually, we
call?
have to have the mayor in there.
You have to have.
It is right out of the community charter.
Okay.
The way it would go is two councillors in writing request the mayor. The mayor has, I believe it's 24 hours, and then it comes to the clerk, and I would have to do it.
Okay.
So it gets done.
So
It's
if
just-
the mayor won't do it,
I have to.
It still gets done. Okay, that was the clarification I wanted. Yeah.
Okay, moving on, 8.04.
Rick.
I know, Rick, but I'm just wondering.
The chair must preserve and decide questions of order. What's wrong with that?
So
So-
8.04, Councillor Richter. In this case, you were, what was the recourse for the chair? Actually, this is actually included in a separate section. So if you look at 919, and I kind of laugh at this sometimes, if a person other than the member resists or disobeys an order of the chair to leave a meeting or of council, the person may be removed by the township clerk, or the important part, she may call 911.
No, what I was getting at, and this comes from Robert's rules, is if the mayor is, or if the assembly, like let's say we had an angry mob come and take over chambers, and they were yelling and screaming and waving signs around and so on, what is the mayor's recourse then? Under Robert's rules, the mayor simply stands and adjourns the meeting and leaves the room.
And I think that's what we've had in practice when we've had situations like that. We've adjourned the meeting.
Yeah.
If it was simply left to the mayor, there would be no recourse for other councillors to make a motion to adjourn. As it stands now, the mayor can say, we're out of here, or a councillor, if believes that the situation is bad enough, the councillors can make a motion, at which point the mayor has to do that, has to
Entertain the motion.
entertain the motion. But my personal piece of advice, if Mark is headed out the back door, go. Because if he's already abandoned you, we're in big trouble.
No, but I'm wondering if we need to specify that in this, so that in the event that we do have, it's never happened, but if it ever does
I don't know that
happen.
it's. I mean, we can, but I don't think it's really necessary in that councillors make a motion and it's seconded now. It would simply be the same process rather than bog it down.
But under Robert's rules, he doesn't even have. He can just simply adjourn the meeting and walk out.
Well, that's what he can do now.
Because
Because under this, it says that the mayor must preserve, the chair must preserve and decide questions of order.
and I think we have an occasion where we've had to adjourn a meeting rather quickly and everybody left, so it does function.
Okay.
To be honest, if there's an angry mob and they're going to come hitting me with signs, I'm not sure I'd wait for the mayor personally.
Mayor froze?
Because if
Defend
Mark and I are
yourself.
gone, we're done.
Need 2/3.
Yeah, 2/3.
Funny guy, okay. All right, moving on.
I just want to ask one clarification, if you don't mind. I come on. The community charter, there are some powers that gives the mayor and us ejecting people for any reason. So that's part of it. And then on this matter, I know from what Councilor Richter is saying, preserving order, which can be unruling people, we can always adjourn. But the mayor always can say, you all have to leave.
Yes.
And then we get out of here while the police come and clear
Yes,
the room.
and we've
But
done that.
There's ways of, and then
There
we
is
leave
ways
with
of doing
the
it.
police. Yeah, the ways of
Yeah,
doing
we just
it.
we adjourn the meeting and everyone leaves.
Yeah.
And on the
That's- and
opposite
that's what we did
scale,
with-
if I might say, if the mayor wants to adjourn for some reason that we don't agree with, then we can challenge the chair
Sure.
too, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It
So
makes it much
Maybe
better.
we like a bit of mayhem.
When the mayor's friends all come in, start protesting,
Yeah.
the eight other eight members of council still has control, right? It goes, but normally everybody's going to agree with, okay, somebody take charge here, get us out of here, And we did that last term. There was a couple times where we adjourned and left the room while the RCP dealt with an individual, and then we came back when it was clear, and that took some time, but we have used that tool. So, thanks. Just want to make sure it's clear.
Okay, so can we move through the next few sections. Where are we at now, Ms. Bauer?
Okay, 8.06. I guess what I was wondering about on this one was more if we needed to specify what happens after we raise a point of privilege.
I think the difficulty here is a point of privilege is a rather large scope of what can be. A point of privilege can be the room is too cold. A point of privilege can be it's loud outside, somebody close the window. So those point of privileges aren't points of order. They're more to do with the comfort and control and loudness and stuff like that. So I think it would be very hard to define what it is. Most often someone will go adjust the heat or something. It's kind of hard to quantify what a point of privilege is. It's more about it's too loud, it smells funny.
So we don't need additional clarification?
I don't think so.
Okay.
It's too wide.
8.07, that's the same rule as most other meetings. I think even Robert's Rules has that the challenge of the chair is not debatable.
That's actually right out of the community charter. We can't change that.
Okay, then tie vote should be a defeat vote like it's all other council.
Yes. I wondered how come that's different. Is that out of the charter? Because I think every other tie vote is a defeat vote. Why would this one not be a defeat
Community
vote?
charter says so.
Community charter? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Most chairs will vote on their own side, so it's mute.
It's mute. Yeah.
You allow the chair to vote, it's going to vote in favor, it's going to be 5-4 then. It's like,
Yeah, some people say the mayor votes only at the last thing, but that's not true.
No,
we,
it's
we
not.
always vote, yeah.
it's specified, yeah.
So a tie is a tie. Okay, 9:05. What happens when the members appeal to council? Is a vote taken immediately? Well, that's the same thing. It's a challenge of the
That's
chair,
a
is it
challenge
no?
chair, and votes are taken immediately
With no debate.
with no debate. Community charter simplifies no debate.
But we don't need 2/3 to throw them out, do we?
No.
Oh, really?
No, you don't need 2/3.
Challenge of the chair is a simple majority?
Challenge of a chair is a simple majority, but he sustained it when the votes are equal.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I see, yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good point. Well, that's true. It's defeated.
Well, you remember my first meeting.
Yeah, your best friend challenged you. What the heck's the matter with him? It was Council Ward.
They were teaching these. It was a lesson in chair meetings.
Okay, moving on. Time limit. You want to increase that?
No, speaking order.
Yeah, be 9.07.
I'm wondering why whoever moves the motion can speak to it the first time, but they don't have the right of speaking last. It would seem to me they should get to open and close debate on it.
That would be the will of council.
I'm not aware of any actual
No.
policy that says you can speak first, last, or second.
We
or
included
or
in
wrap up or
our
anything.
bylaws, but you have the ability to speak first, so that you can explain the motion. But we have never had anything to be who would speak last.
Okay. But what we sometimes have is we see the mayor speaking last on all of it. And
No, because I speak, as soon as he says that, I push the button.
You speak last.
Yeah, it's the race to be last.
He says, I'd like to have the last word, and it's like, quick
Yeah.
button.
No, we do. And sitting and looking at the pad, I realize sometimes there's a race to be last.
But I guess the question is, if you've made the motion, should you be the one to close debate on it? Because
Well,
it's your motion.
Councilor Woodward, do you want to speak to this? Because I think you were also asking for an extra time for the motion
I
maker.
had a couple of suggestions. We can do mine at the same time if you want.
Okay, so let's see, who's next? Mayor Froze, you're up.
Just some comments and sitting in the chair for 8 years and learning this, from the seat of my pants kind of thing, and relying on this. I think it's really appropriate, and I've been maybe remiss, and when someone moves the motion, I go by the list that shows up. But when the mover says, hey, I want to speak to it first, I think I've been pretty good in letting them speak to it, not forgetting. I try my best. And then yeah, that's right. So, and then but we also have the rule, and this is, I think Councilor Woodward will want to speak to it, where you get 2 times. And personally, I think it's a fair rule. What I try and do as chair is at the end of the debate, I ask, is there any further questions? And then I like to sum it up or give my opinion or whatever. It doesn't mean that if you've spoken once, you can't push a button. And I don't think there's a time I've restricted anybody from speaking after me. It's their second time or their first time, their full right to speak, and so I let them speak, even though I'm trying to make sure. And I've seen better chairs than me in action in other committees I am, where they ensure that everyone has had a chance. And I want to always say that at the end of the debate: is there any further discussion? And it's not to supersede anybody or take control, it's to try and run an efficient meeting. But anyways, that's just my point. So hopefully I haven't done that, and, you know, and I try and...
No, I would say I've never seen that. Councillor Woodward, your point now. There you go.
Yeah, I think I brought up something along the lines, I don't know, we can go through Councillor Richter's list and come back to this, or we can sort of discuss mine and mine at the same time. I think what I was trying to get down to is 10 minutes is a long time. I think sitting in the audience for many years, there was a lot of councillors, maybe could have said the same thing in less than 10 minutes. And I would like to encourage that. So that I came up with the concept of reducing that 2 times for 5 minutes, but then the mover of the motion could get 1, 2, or 3 minutes to speak to the motion, because I've found it for a lengthy, complicated notice of motion, there's lots of good debate. If I speak to the motion, really just trying to explain it, now I've only got one more chance to speak. And so I'd be willing to take less time for more opportunities in a situation like that, and that was the intent of doing that, to have even if it's only a minute or 2 minutes to explain the motion, and then I don't feel like I need 10 minutes, and so that's the proposal I made, was to reduce the amount of time, and then give the mover of a motion a minute or two to explain the motion. I'd be happy to consider that now or later.
Okay, my suggestion is we consider it now because we're okay with what we've got here, and I guess we'll go through the list. But I mean, the gold star motion is 3, therefore be it 2 be it resolved, and 3 whereases. So that should, and you could take 2 minutes to read that. But anyway, it would be self-explanatory. Mayor Froese, are you on to this notion? So are you going to make a motion?
I think I spoke to this. I spoke to this already. I like it the way it is, and I think if you know, the mover, I understand what Councillor Wood was saying, because you do get to speak first. You move your motion. You can read all your whereases and move the motion. I don't consider that as your first time speaking. And if I have,
and do you have some allowance to have a little preamble, or you don't usually?
And then they can speak to it. But then quite often I'll go on to the speakers list. So then you can.
What about allowing a preamble? Does it have to be a policy? In other words, you could introduce the motion.
Introduce your motion and move it. Then that's when the speakers list doesn't start until the seconder, actually, until it's on the table. So all you're doing is reading your whereases, which gives you lots of opportunity. The motion, move it, has to be seconded. At the point it's seconded, that's when the speakers list should start, and hopefully I've done that, but I haven't.
So what's the will of council then? Do you want to make a hard...
control who gets last, so then I always go back to the... And that's where I think you can still speak to it. Then after it's seconded, then you speak to it. And then once you've spoken to it, you can wait until everyone else has had a chance to speak, and then speak again. Or wait, I don't know. That's my thoughts, but I'm just trying.
Yeah, the intent of the concept was to sort of address the fact that there's not much point speaking to a motion that hasn't been seconded. And then the minute that you're now trying to explain the motion, you're consuming one of your only 2 chances to debate the motion. You're not really debating the motion, you're kind of explaining the motion. And then you only have one more chance to join the debate. So you essentially have to wait. If it's getting contentious, knowing you only have one more chance to speak, you have to essentially wait, and then maybe the debate goes in a certain direction, and you're trying to preserve that one last chance to speak. And so the idea that once you have it firsted and seconded, that now you're consuming one of your chances to speak to simply introduce the motion was what I was trying to get around. Even if it's 1 minute to introduce the motion that doesn't consume one of your 2 times to speak, I'd be fine with that. So I'll make that motion. I don't know if where the rest of the council stands on it. But that's the intent, was to add a mover to get even 1 or 2 minutes to speak to the motion or introduce the motion that doesn't consume one of your 2 times to speak.
Okay, can you hold it?
Yep,
until,
I can hold it.
Here, but we have a potential motion to add the 3rd speaker. Well, 3rd time to speak for the mover. Councillor Richter.
Instead of reading out, I mean, some of these motions are getting ridiculously long. And instead of reading out 2 pages of a motion, why don't we just change it and say, or change it with the intent being, make the assumption that council members have already read the motion, so it doesn't need to be read to them, and then just introduce your motion in a 1 minute, saying, okay, the intent of this motion is, I am moving that we do this, and the intent of it is, instead of reading the motion out. I could go along with that.
He'd be fine with that.
No, I hesitate to take away parliamentary procedure.
Yeah.
Okay, let's each comment. I'm just going to keep moving down the list, okay? Councillor Arneson?
Yes, thank you. I like the notion of, I know that it says in the language for the allowable time to speak is not to exceed 10 minutes, but I think personally that 5 would be plenty because, 10 is a real oration. And, and then if we multiply it by if everybody wanted to do that, it could be quite extensive. So I think it's fair that you would get twice to speak 5 minutes. But in addition, I really agree that you should be able to have a bit of a preamble or an explanatory time where you're able to talk about your motion and the rationale for it and not use up your 2 times doing that.
Okay, so I'm going to clear everything here, and because we don't have a motion at all now, but now Councillor Woodward's going to make one.
So I'm not sure, try to help me up with the wording here, but the intent is each member is entitled to speak up to 2 times on each bit of a motion for a period not to exceed 5 minutes.
That's the First Amendment, is to take 10
We
to
can
move it to
divide
5.
this as well if there's some, except for granted permission by the council to exceed those limits. And then maybe there's a separate section where mover of a notice of motion is granted 2 minutes to introduce the motion. Some wording like that, which you can wordsmith for me.
Do you have that, Ms. Bauer? Yeah. So that would maybe be a 9.09B. Or where is it?
Be adjusted, yeah. But I think the council understands the intent.
9.08 A and B, it sounds like. Okay, so that's been moved. Seconder?
Nobody likes that.
Oh, Councillor Arneson does. Okay, so now we're going to move down here and see how we make on that. So we have a motion on the floor, and it's a 2-part motion. Part A is to change 10 to 5 minutes. Part B is to add a 2-minute preamble. I would think, assuming Part A carries, because Part B is kind of based upon, well, you only got 5 minutes,
That is
so
being
you get the extra
together.
time. They're kind of together and apart.
Trying to lengthen the meetings.
Thank you.
Okay, so you're on, Councillor, who is on? Mayor Froese, you're on.
It's interesting. I certainly hear the one thing about the whereas. I think it's parliamentary procedure. If somebody wants to read it, that's part of their opening statement, and I wouldn't want. But hopefully, members of council, and I've seen it where they kind of police themselves, say, "Well, I'm not going to read it all," and they go straight to the motion.
And I remember, sorry to interrupt, but I think it's being read into the meeting too, right?
That's right, and it is part of their right. And certainly, as I said earlier, making your motion is making the motion. When you speak to it, you're not just introducing it, you're creating an argument in favor of your motion. I mean, that is an argument. You're not just introducing your motion, you're creating your argument why everybody should agree with your motion. And that is an opportunity to speak. So I see that as a very important opportunity to speak because you got that prime position in the beginning to say this is important for all these reasons, and it's an argument. The 10-minute or 5-minute, I've never policed it. I only do that with delegations and public hearings. We know there's some long-winded councillors, and I haven't.
Well, Ferguson has talked for 10 minutes, but not usually about the motion.
That's right. So, 5 or 10, whatever council wants. I don't push the button when a councillor starts, and it'll be up to each individual chair who does it. Mayor's way past me. 10 gives that leeway, and I think overall, for the most part, I haven't seen councillors go over 5, but I have never timed it, and I've never had an objection from council. The odd time, someone will pipe up and say you're speaking too long, but I don't think I've had that issue. So I'm okay with the 10 minutes. It just saves policing everybody. And if council wants to go for giving the mover that extra minute at the end to wrap up his argument, it's up to council. I don't have a problem with it. I don't think I'll support it.
Okay, but let's be clear on that. I think what we're suggesting, the motion is not to say that person gets the end, but they have the 2 minutes to introduce the motion.
It does put a burden on the chair to start policing the timing, and then someone's point of order.
Okay, so my understanding, what we're saying here, besides the 5 and 10 minute thing, is that the mover gets this extra opportunity to speak first without being one of his 2 times, or the councillor's 2 times. So the councillor may or may not get the last word.
It is an argument, though. You are presenting an argument.
Am I clear on that? I'm right on it.
Anyways, I don't need to belabor it. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Davis?
Yes, thank you. You write it, you read it. And I think that when you read it, you are presenting your problem, what's the word?
Preamble.
Your preamble to do that. yeah, like I say, the motion itself is pushing it in your direction. I think we're trying to make this better, but I don't know if this is the spot we could be making it better, because if you write for 8 years, I haven't seen 10 minutes. It's a motion. You have to be real comfortable, and so does everybody here, that you can't just gun through it in 5 minutes. I don't know. When the motions come up and they get longer and longer, I don't feel the need to put a limit on that 5 minutes. What I do feel, there's other places to cut time, but it's not on this, because the motion is something that's changing things. This isn't light duty stuff. This isn't, so I don't know. I don't support changing it to 5 minutes, because I don't think that's going to solve any lengthy meeting problems. And yeah, sorry, I don't think I agree with changing that. I don't think this is where we need to be focusing on. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Ferguson.
Okay, thank you. I also feel that I like the 10 to 5. I like that part, although sometimes people may go over, which is fine. I'm sure the mayor will let me go past 5 the odd time. I'm not in favor of the 2-minute preamble and then speaking again 2 more times. So I don't know if we need division, Mr.
We
Chair.
could divide when we get to the vote.
Okay, so we'll wait till the time in which I'll move to either division now or later.
Okay. We can. I think when we call the vote, we'll do it in 2 parts. All right. Councillor Whitmarsh.
I do feel that the preamble to the motion is really the first opportunity to speak to that. It's written by the mover, so I do think that's a pretty significant part of.
Talking about the whereases.
The whereases, yeah. The whereases is written by the mover, and therefore that's what their position is. They're making it clear what their position is through the whereases, and so I'm happy with that. So I would suggest that we just stay at the 2 times on debating it. I'm happy to reduce to 5. In fact, what's quite interesting among academia is they've actually moved to what's called the 3-minute thesis. And it's actually taking doctoral work, which you've spent 7 and 8 years doing, and condensing it into 3 minutes. And it's actually a skill and a talent to be able to do that. And the very best in the world do it in 3 minutes or less. That's 8 years of work. So I'd actually like to propose that we make it 3 minutes and encourage our councillors to work on their skills of speaking the points in less time as opposed to greater. But I'm willing to go along with 5 to fit the rest of the group. But I think 5 is already too long, but I will support 5 and go along with the others. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is if I promise to eliminate whereases from all my motions, you'll support the motion, Councillor Whitmarsh. I mean, I think I would also go for 3 times at 3 minutes, or 3 times at 2 minutes. But I think we can take this incremental step, and I'll support division so that we can each vote our conscience on this one. Thanks.
Did that in 22 seconds. Any more discussion? I should say something. There used to be a clause that if you mentioned another councillor's name, you got another chance to speak. Remember that, Mr. Backen? And usually it was in a derogatory fashion. Oh, I get another 10 minutes. Okay, so explain the motion. The first is going to be changing 10 minutes to 5 minutes. Did you want to speak again, Councillor Davis?
Question.
Go ahead.
Does anybody here really feel like you don't have enough time when you're doing your motions?
Apparently.
Well, because you're long-winded then, and your motions are too long. And I you know what? Okay.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to speak in defense.
That's being. Read them all from now on. That's. I should have actually. That's conduct and debate, isn't it? I shouldn't. No, what I meant was.
Right. Here we go again, Councillor Richter.
Okay. Sorry.
You up again?
I actually like the suggestion of three times for 3 minutes, and that's a total of 10 minutes. So or close to 10 minutes. So I would go with 3 times at 3 minutes.
Okay, it's getting a little complicated to change, because right now we're just changing 9.08. Okay, well, it's divided already in the time. So right now, the motion is to change 10 minutes to 5 minutes.
Someone else can move something else.
Are you, oh yeah, let's do that. Okay, we're going to call the question on 10 to 5.
10 to 5?
Yeah, oh yeah, it's all
Okay,
been moved.
all right, so 10 to 5?
So,
Sure.
2 at 5.
2 at
all right,
5.
so I'm calling the vote on part A, which is to change the 10 minutes to 5 minutes, right? And that's A4, I think. Yeah, we're voting right now. We're calling the vote on changing it from 10 minutes to 5 minutes. There could be another motion to go to 3. Oh, Councillor Whitmarsh, you haven't decided yet.
I voted.
Councillor Whitmarsh?
Sorry, what's that?
You haven't voted?
He's going to 3. He's the guy to 3.
10 down to 5.
Okay, well,
He voted.
well, now we called the vote, and it was. Do you want to change it? Because if you're in the affirmative, that's what it says. So it passes with Mayor Froese and Councillor Davis opposed.
I don't mind it, it's just the police, as a chair to police, the points of order.
Trying to be fair.
Well, I really don't know if I've ever even heard someone speak 5 minutes.
Maybe it just feels like 10 minutes.
Oh, that always happens. Okay, so we've got that through. It's gone to 5. Are we okay with that? Apparently. It still has to come to council so you can think about it, talk about it twice there. Now, part B, I don't know if we're having discussion. We've already called the vote.
What was part B?
Part B is to add the 2-minute preamble to the mover. So this is, at this point, increasing the speaking time to 3 times only for the mover. All right, go ahead.
Does that include reading the minutes or reading the motion?
Yeah, of course it does.
Or
Oh,
is
it
it
does not.
over and above reading them?
Okay, so wait a
It has
second.
to be seconded, right? Otherwise, what's the point of talking?
Now, if you don't mind me saying, not that I'm a real parliamentarian, but I may be, you have to, and Councillor will agree with this, you have to read it into the minutes. So you have to say something. You have to move it. Otherwise, that's what when
Can't you just
we're
say-
saying we're doing readings, we're actually reading things, right? So that motion has to be made, and that is not one of the times to speak, even though the whereases can explain lots of things.
I believe traditionally the motion was made that way, but as the agendas are out and council members and the public can view them, it is.
Yeah, so that we're going back to the old days when people only heard it for the first time in
So
person.
I think
they
in
didn't
this
get it by
case,
email.
it is fair for council members to say,
Okay.
as said in, or as
Exactly.
put in the agenda, or as,
Right.
yeah.
So this motion that we're voting on here is to add an additional time of 2 minutes for the mover, and I imagine at the beginning, not to wrap up, to introduce the motion.
2 minutes, no, but
That's your motion, wasn't it, Councilor?
So they're going to
Let's be
get,
clear. The motion that's on the table that we're now debating is a motion by Councilor Woodward to add a 2-minute preamble to that person that's making the motion,
After it's been seconded.
after it's been seconded.
so the person that's making the motion gets to read a 2-page motion and then speak 2 minutes afterwards and then have 2 more times to speak to it?
He promised not to do
I don't think
that.
there's equity in
Promise
that.
not to read them anymore.
Just vote.
Yeah, he,
Okay, let's call the question, Mr. Chair.
that's what we're voting on, okay.
so I'm going to clear the queue and everyone is going to listen to me. The motion is to add a 2-minute preamble at the beginning given by the mover, assuming it's been seconded.
After it's been seconded.
Only and after it's been seconded. We're calling the vote. Just a minute, I've got to push buttons here.
Okay, I got 3 buttons.
Go ahead, push anyone you like. Uh-oh.
Come on.
Apparently that didn't go too far. All right, we're moving on. That's the end. I have to read this according to the world. Ferguson, Richter, Whitmarsh, Kunst, Long, Froese, and Davis opposed. Moving on.
And unfortunately, that makes it 2 o'clock.
Mr. Chair, yeah, it is 2 o'clock, so we should.
Oh, it's 2 o'clock. Okay, so we're going to need a motion to adjourn to yet another CPC, which could be on a night that's not a council night. Go ahead, Councillor Richter. Yeah, we're at closing time.
I know we're going to come back to this, but I wanted to throw this idea out for staff to give some consideration to before we come back to the next CPC meeting on this. I spoke with Mayor Jackson from Delta.
Former Mayor Jackson.
Or, former Mayor
Jackson.
Anyway, Delta has a 3-page rule for all reports to council. And that is that the report must summarize the ask of council and the key points in 3 pages. The reports can have as many attachments as staff want to put in, but 3 pages total for the report coming to council.
Okay, we've got 30
I think that's
seconds.
a great idea, and could we consider that here?
So here's
to
my
try?
suggestion, if council will go with this. We're going to adjourn this meeting. there are a number of things that we've asked staff about, including what you've just brought up. So can we come back to the next meeting with some more examples of other jurisdictions in terms of the Tuesday night? Although we've moved on from some of those things, but maybe bringing back some of those resources to us. And so when is this being adjourned to? The next CPC, Mr. Bakken, or Ms. Bauer?
It would be September, and we'll have to.
So a motion to adjourn until September.
I'm not too sure exactly if it won't be a council day. September has, of course, the conference in it and a stat holiday, and so we'll work our best to get it somewhere.
Get it through. Motion to adjourn to September. Mayor Froese, Councillor Davis, all in favor, opposed, carried. Look at that, 2 o'clock. Exactly.